still not dead, okay? It's still green, still growing, it still has some nutritional value. Generally, that's a medium quality forage. And then once it's weathered, mature, so you go out there and look at native grass, Bermuda grass this time of year, no nutrition in it, brown, dead, mostly stem, that's going to be a poor quality forage, okay? Moisture content. Again, generally speaking, the more moisture that's present in that forage or the lower dry matter content of that forage, the higher in quality it is. So generally increased moisture equals increased quality. The exception to that is what? If we're talking about forages, what's the exception where dry matter doesn't really matter to me that much? We talked about it in class. Hay, okay? Because it's not that that forage is that dry, we've cut that forage and dried it out. So if it was an excellent quality forage when it's cut, if it's preserved properly, if we store it properly, it's still going to be an excellent quality forage when we feed it. So hay would be the one exception where a high dry matter content doesn't mean a whole lot to me from a forage quality standpoint. Protein, I already gave you those numbers, so you can just circle them or star them there on your sheet. 13 and above being excellent, 7 to 12 being medium, and below 6 being poor. And remember, kind of that magic cutoff at the bottom end is because those rumen microbes need about 1% nitrogen to survive, reproduce, digest forage. And so 1% times your 6.25, right, your conversion factor gives you about 6% true protein, 6.25%. So once we fall below that level, we really don't have enough nitrogen being supplied to those bugs. And so we'll have a not very healthy rumen, they'll digest less forage, and so it's kind of an issue that compounds itself. They're going to start losing weight, they're not going to perform as well, all those sort of things. On the top end, for a mature animal, a mature ruminant animal, they typically don't need more than about 13-14% protein diet. So anything above that is extra protein or extra nitrogen to the animal. A growing animal may need a higher percentage, but if we're talking about, you know, mature cows, ewes, whatever, that's kind of about all we need. So anything above that would just be extra protein or extra nitrogen to that animal. We talked down there at the bottom of that, it mentions that positive associative effect again. So if we're feeding a poor quality forage, we provide protein supplementation, we're going to increase the intake of that poor quality forage. So that's the positive associative effect. Feeding one feed increases the intake of your primary forage or your primary diet. Fiber, on the next page, we've given you some guidelines there as well. If you just want to star them, highlight them, whatever. 20s, excellent. Okay, a concentrate, we'll let concentrates go up to 20% fiber. So our kind of definition of a roughage in class is it has to be above 20%. So if you think of it that way, 20% fiber in a roughage is a really good, really high quality roughage. It's almost as good as a concentrate from a fiber standpoint. Medium quality in the 30s, poor quality in the 40s. Again, 40s, that's your wheat straw, mature switchgrass hay, really stemmy, really high fiber type of forages. Okay, but those kind of straightforward guidelines there from a fiber standpoint. The one we didn't probably talk about in class because we didn't get there is particle size. Okay, so we can manipulate the particle size of forages. So what's the classic example of that, like in a feedlot or a dairy? What? Grind it, okay? So we'll take that long stem hay, we'll put it in a forage processor or grinder and grind it to 2 or 3 or 4, whatever our target size is. So we are starting that physical digestion process, if you will, because we've already chopped it up into more smaller, more finer particles to improve the digestion of it. It'll speed up digestion, speed up rate of passage. Another example that we use a lot in livestock feeding would be silage, okay? So if you're not familiar with silage, we take that corn plant, wheat plant, whatever it is, and we chop it up while it's still wet, okay? So we chop up the leaves, the stem, the grain that's on that corn plant. We blow it into a pit or silo or bunker, pack it, take the air away from it, and cover it. So it starts to ferment, and so we've reduced the particle size, we've started fermenting it. Again, kind of a form of pre-digestion, if you will, before we ever feed it to the animal. So we take something that would be kind of medium in quality or average in quality, that big corn plant out there, and we make it into something that's excellent in quality by processing it and starting that fermentation process before we ever feed it to the animals. Also does a lot of nice things from a storage standpoint, making that product stable. So there's other reasons we do it as well. But it's a really nice feed stuff. So those would kind of be the two classic examples of processing. But the more we process something, the higher quality it's going to be. So that would kind of be the last one. So again, more processing, increased quality. The last one we talk about is maybe you're looking at a forage or something that you don't know what it is, okay? Or you're out walking in a pasture kind of trying to do a field call or a field assessment of your forage. So things that you visually look for in addition to this list is color, okay? Greener, better than yellow, better than brown, okay? So the greener the forage is, the better quality that forage is. Leaf versus stem. More leaf, higher quality forage. More stem, lower quality forage. Seed head. Good example of that. Does any of you guys that have horses or do anything with horses feed Timothy hay? Saw a couple nods, okay? Timothy hay used to be real popular for horse people. The reason, the way you know it was Timothy hay is it has a very characteristic seed head. So people would want to see the seed head in that hay to know it was legitimately Timothy, not some other mixed grass or something else. The problem is if a seed head's present, you know that forage is mature, so you automatically know it's not as high quality as what it could be. So sometimes that's kind of a double-edged sword. But if you see a seed head present, you know it's mature, you know it's not as the highest quality it could be. And then the other one is weeds, trash, any kind of contaminants in that forage or that hay is going to decrease the eating quality of it, decrease the intake of it. It can be physical trash, it can be weeds. On years when hay's thin, you see bar ditches baled up, briar patches, all that sort of stuff. So all those things decrease quality. So that's kind of our guideline. Has anybody got any question on those? And so if I give you, which we're getting ready to do some together, but if I give you a forage and say, is it excellent, medium, or poor in quality, you can't just look at one of those things. Somebody every year gets worked up on this lab because they're like, well, the protein was 12%. You said it had to be 13. Well, yes, but did you also look at the fiber? Did you look at the dry matter? Did you look at the maturity? Okay, so if 3 or 4 of those things tell me it's excellent, then it's excellent. Okay, so don't get hung up on protein's more important than fiber or maturity or anything like that. If you know nothing else, 75–80% of the time, the maturity will tell you what you need to know. Okay, very rarely is an immature forage not excellent in quality. There's a handful of examples. Very rarely is a weathered mature forage anything but poor in quality. There's a few examples, okay? So if you want to get hung up, I'm telling you not to get hung up on one, but if you want to get hung up on one, get hung up on maturity, you'll be right way more than you are wrong. Ideally, you look at 3 or 4 and say, 3 of these things tell me excellent, one of them tells me medium, I'm going to call it excellent. Or 4 of these things tell me poor, one tells me medium, I'm going to call it poor. So again, try and look big picture. So I'm going to trade Brittany's spots. We're doing this as we go. I don't love this room, but we'll make do today. So she's already got your first one up there on the board. We've got native grass, February, May, and August. Fescue hay, immature, prairie hay. Those of you that aren't familiar, that's basically native grass hay. Oat straw, and then corn silage dough. That's, just referring to the maturity of that corn plant. So that grain is in the dough stage is what we mean by that. So it's not completely hard and mature. It's still kind of a soft, doughy texture to that actual corn in those ears at that point. So if we look those up, and you've got it on your paper, so she didn't write it all down there for you. Let's just start with the first one. Native grass hay, 93 and change on a dry matter basis. So extremely dry, no moisture. That would tell me it's poor in quality. Okay? Crude protein, 2.5, well below 6. That would tell me it's poor in quality. TDN is in the 30s. We didn't use TDN as a spec, but I'll tell you, or you can just look at those other forages, that's pretty low. Okay? Crude fiber is 40. So we said anything 40 and above was poor. So everything about that forage tells me it's poor. I call it poor. It's brown, it's dead, it's low in crude protein.